No spoilers ahead. I'm Johnny. Welcome to my house of horrors.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 is directed by David Blue Garcia, produced and written by Fede Alvarez and a handful of other folks.
Happening. Now, I don't normally dress like a twat, intentionally anyways, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to blend in with half the cast of this movie today. Now, in my opinion, 1974's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre was an extraordinary, lightning-in-a-jar horror masterpiece that never needed a sequel. This 2022 version marks the 9th installment in the franchise, and up until now, I don't think any of the previous movies have come close to matching the original's intensity or originality. So let's find out if this new version makes the cut, or if it's just another butchering. See what I did there?
When the story opens, we meet the requisite group of diverse, boring, predictable young folks, and these ones have their sights set on gentrifying the dying town of Harlow, Texas. And whether you think gentrification's a good thing or a bad thing isn't really important here, because after you meet Leela, Dante, Ruth, and Melody, the main characters, you're gonna want them to fail no matter what they're doing. Melody and Dante go in to check out an old orphanage they believe they own, only to find it's still occupied by an old woman named Ginny, played by Alice Creech, who made a fantastic witch and an even better board queen.
Imagine dating the board queen? You'd never not have free Wi-Fi, and if your phone ever died, you just plug it right into her.
Ginny's been looking after the icon formerly known as Leatherface for nearly 50 years. When she drops dead in the back of an ambulance after arguing with the two young assholes, he kills everyone around him in spectacular fashion before separating his foster mom from her pretty face. Then after some confusing sentiment and a meerkat impersonation, he walks back into the middle of a town that sells Texas Chainsaw Massacre tourist trinkets covered in blood and wearing someone else's face.
And not a single person sees him.
Back in Harlow, a local mechanic named Richter, played by Irish Mo Dunford, loses his Finn McCool over Ginny's death and takes the keys to the bus, stranding the trendy young'uns. He says they'll get the keys back if they can produce the deed to the orphanage. Meanwhile, Sally Hardesty, our lone survivor from the original movie, resurfaces, reborn harder than David Goggins, hands covered in blood and ripe for revenge. Melody and Dante figure out they never owned the orphanage, meaning Ginny died for absolutely nothing. And while they're hooking around in other people's property, the icon formerly known as Leatherface comes home.
And he's real cranky-like.
Dante ends up wearing one of Fede Alvarez's favorite special effects, and Melody manages to go undetected for ages in a tiny, cramped house made exclusively of raw, creaky floorboards. The icon, formerly known as Leatherface, shows us why I use the term formerly in his title, when he smashes a hole in the wall to retrieve a chainsaw, something that wouldn't have even occurred to the original, clueless, unpredictable, mentally disadvantaged Leatherface. Richter shows up, so the elderly man who's been confined to a room in a house without any ability to maintain even a basic level of fitness, kicks the living shit out of the younger, virile, active mechanic. Instead of taking advantage of Richter's self-sacrifice, Melody just stays under the bed. And when she does eventually pick up the keys Richter left for her as his dying act, she makes a new friend on the stairs. At about 5'2" and 70 pounds, with most of her weight coming from hair product, Melody is sent soaring down half a flight of stairs through the floorboards and into the crawl space under the house. And while that would have certainly killed me, she's speeding around between support beams like a Navy SEAL training instructor just a few seconds later. She escapes out a vent, and when her and Leela hop back on the bus with the other assholes, we're treated to a few minutes of legit bedlam, when the icon formerly known as Leatherface gives the assholes what for, Texas style.
Guts is grinded, limbs is lopped off, and the bus is transformed into a literal bloodbath, all in the name of Ginny, whose face is literally projected onto the bus windows for any viewers who don't understand why he's doing what he's doing.
They crank the ridiculous up to 11 when this guy manages to walk with a chainsaw ripping through his pelvis.
Now this observation is just for the boys. You know when you get grazed just right, and it makes you want to curl up on the floor and puke? Chainsaw. Still walking.
Melody and Leela pop out a window just in time to catch a ride with Sally Hardesty, not Laurie Strode. But instead of leaving, Sally heads up to finish off her nemesis. Except when she sees him, she ends up tongue-tied, so she blurts out her favorite Destiny's Child song instead.
Say my name.
Because actually believing that he would remember her name when he probably doesn't even know his own would mean that whoever wrote this had absolutely no idea about the source material, and that would piss me off. We're gonna go with the Destiny's Child angle instead.
The icon formerly known as Leatherface isn't into Destiny's Child, so he goes downstairs to finish off the two young girls Sally is wisely locked in her car. After Sally repairs her ego, she hits his shoulder with a shotgun blast. And if I was Sally Hardesty, I'd be all like,
Well, I'm the one that got away, and I'm here to make sure that you don't get away again, as I did technically let you get away a couple of minutes ago, didn't I? Which was confusing, given that I've been looking for you for years and years. And I am a Texas Ranger now, and I am aware that you've done yourself some killing. I mean, you killed my friends and my brother, and I've been ham-fisted into this movie for no other reason than to exact my revenge on you. The more I talk about that previous scene, the less sense it makes to me. But I was upset. Who doesn't know Destiny's Child? As cliche as it is, that album, The Writing's on the Wall, it was the soundtrack to my... Where are you going? I think I let him get away again.
After hearing the icon formerly known as Leatherface in a dark alley, he surprises Sally by coming out of the dark alley. And the slip-up costs her everything.
You know how ridiculous it would be to have a character in a movie keep on fighting through a heart attack? She took a chainsaw to the heart.
But Sally's tough, so she fires off another shot, reloads the gun, and gives Leela some advice before she finally expires. The final fight's a convoluted, tangled mess with an overweight, supernatural geriatric guy fighting off a pair of intolerable, screaming hobbits. And the only catharsis comes with Melody's head coming off at the end.
Which was actually pretty fantastic. And there you have it. That's the plot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. Now, I've already said, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre did not need a sequel. It was a story about a fucked up family, it hit audiences like a sledgehammer, it didn't need to justify itself, it didn't need some long, complicated backstory. It just was.
And conversely, Texas Chainsaw 2022 had several backstories, and it reduced the insanity of the Sawyer family to a single, predictable, tired trope of a one-dimensional villain. And that reduction, coupled with the complicated story, is why this sequel doesn't work. All the best movies have a simple premise. For example, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974. A group of friends fall prey to a murderous, cannibalistic family. Now compare that with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. A group of young adults interested in gentrifying a mostly abandoned town in Texas who are traumatized from a recent school shooting and hoping to start a life in a more peaceful area caused the death of a local woman, bringing the wrath of her foster son, who ends up being a famous killer who's never been found by the police and has been pursued by the lone survivor of one of his previous killing sprees, who until now has not been able to find him.
The true terror of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre lies in Sally's journey. It's about the series of events she's thrown into and what she ends up losing and subsequently regaining. Allow me to explain.
Her journey actually starts before the movie does. Sally's return to rural Texas to find out if her grandfather's grave's been desecrated. Then her first exchange is in the van with Edwin Neal's hitchhiker, but the hitchhiker's true psychological impact on Sally isn't fully realized until their second meeting. After the hitchhiker, a masked maniac appears from nowhere and slices Sally's disabled brother to bits with a chainsaw for no reason. She outruns the maniac, but ends up in the arms of Jim Seadow's Drayton Sawyer. And she thinks she's safe until she sees the broom and the toothy grin. She's thrown into a sack like roadkill, and when the sack's removed, it's the hitchhiker who's laughing in her face. And now, his behavior in the van has weight, because she knows he'll hurt her because he hurts himself without provocation. The Ed Gein decorations combined with the introduction to Grandpa proves too much for her, and reality knocks her unconscious. When she comes to, she gets her only moment of brief respite when, for a second, she's not entirely sure where she is.
At the worst of times, it is human nature to hope our situations will get better. If somebody's chasing us with a chainsaw, literally or figuratively, we hope they give up or they fall down. If our situations are just terrible, we hope we can save ourselves. But when we can't save ourselves, we also hope somebody else will be able to save us.
When Sally wakes up and screams, her hosts respond like this.
And now she knows she's getting help from nobody, because now all hope is actually lost.
The original movie's aesthetically grainy and shitty and out of focus, and the set pieces make you want to put on a body condom. So when we see innocent Sally ending up in the wrong place at the worst possible time, we hope she'll get away. Because if we were in her shoes, we'd want to get away. And that's the simple magic of a movie done properly. Now, Texas Chainsaw 2022, like a lot of these modern remakes, is expertly color graded, it's shot to perfection indoors and out, the sound effects are rich and vibrant, and the gore is top notch. From a technical perspective, it's a great movie. But the main characters are irritating and self-centered and entitled. While there's always room for these kind of characters in a horror movie, they can't all be like that, or else there's nobody for the audience to root for. The same applies on the other side with the villain. The Sawyers were a hyper-realistic, murderous collection of cannibals that could have actually existed. When you gentrify them with a generic, predictable, one-dimensional bad guy, you've created a horror movie that pits unlikable protagonists against a villain that nobody's interested in beyond his first 2 minutes on camera.
Now, we're all horror fans here, or you're a friend of mine doing me a favor watching this video. But as horror fans, we all know we like to watch our favorites more than once. Now, I'm not saying I hated Texas Chainsaw 2022, but I am saying I will be watching it a second time. Till next time, folks. It's me, Johnny, from that thing you just watched. If you enjoyed it, go down there and smash me in the face to subscribe. And if you want to watch another thing, there's one right there. Do it!